Okay. So we're going to discuss how this program works. We're going to go through the application together, and I'll give you some tips about what the reviewers are looking for. So just an overview, what is the Room Tax Grant Program? So it is an annual grant program for tourism-related projects. So it started back in 2004, and since then it has put over $2.6 million back into the community. So it's made possible by what's called the hotel occupancy tax or the room tax. So you've probably experienced that when you go on vacation, you take a hotel room, it has all the various taxes and fees on it. The room tax is one of those taxes. So according to Pennsylvania state legislation, that tax must be used for tourism development. So what we do is EMVB uses 70% of that for our marketing campaigns to market the region, and then that 30% goes into the grant program for each respective county. So that means the grant money is going to stay in the county it was collected in. So Wyoming County money goes to the Wyoming County grant, Sullivan County money goes to the Sullivan County grant. And we're really proud of this program. To be able to give away 30% of revenue is awesome. And it's not something that not all DMOs across the state offer. So it's a unique program, and we see so many really cool, inspiring projects come out of this program. So it is a great opportunity. So the eligibility, it's open to 501c3s or 501c6 nonprofits located in or serving Sullivan and Wyoming counties or branches of local or county government, again, in Sullivan and Wyoming counties. Sometimes this happens that someone has a really great project idea, but they're not a nonprofit or they're not a branch of government. And I always say, see if you can partner with one. This happens sometimes with civic groups or clubs that, they do these community-oriented projects, but they're not a nonprofit. Sometimes they're able to partner with their local municipality to get these grants. Same thing if there's an individual who's hosting an event and that event benefits a charity in some way, they can usually file under that charity beneficiary. If you're not in Sullivan or Wyoming County, which I believe everyone on this call is, but for some reason, if you weren't, I know Bradford and Susquehanna also have programs that are very similar to ours, so I would recommend checking those out. I'm not sure about some of the other outlying counties. So the project categories, again, the grant depends on the tourism dollars of people coming in and staying in those hotels. So it's important that all the projects show how it will draw visitors and generate overnight stays. So when you see the application, there is a big emphasis on drawing people from beyond a 50-mile radius. So even though a lot of times these projects are attractive and beneficial to locals, that's wonderful, but it does have to show how it encourages tourism as well. So again, that's set out by the state legislation of how that room tax is allowed to be used. So there are 4 different categories: special event or exhibit. These get lumped together. Sometimes they're really 2 separate types of projects. So a special event would be things like fairs, festivals, arts and culture events, athletic events, anything that's open to the public. But the important part is it is for marketing expenses. So it can't be used for operational expenses, food, entertainment, personnel expenses. It is strictly for the marketing. And there's more on this we'll see it in the application, but under general conditions. Exhibit is for creating any sort of arts or history exhibit that would draw tourists. So with that, there's a little crossover with historic preservation, but things like buying a protective case for an exhibit or buying the equipment to hang artwork, that would be an example of the exhibit project. The next category is marketing and promotional projects. So this is funding for marketing and advertising either your place, a place, attraction that will draw people to the region. So some examples of this from the past, we've had towns do brochures that are like self-guided walking tours or historical tours. People have done, print, radio, TV ads for, their museum or their trail, getting videos made to use on your website or social media, paid social posts. There's a lot of room to do different things with this category. So that's a really popular category that we see. Again, the target audience is that beyond 50-mile radius. So there's some different ways to fulfill that. So for example, if you're printing brochures and you give a couple hundred brochures to EMBB, we can help you fulfill that 50-mile distribution because we have brochure racks over a 50-mile radius. If you do brochures, you can use Getaways on Display. They have a free program that will put your brochure in the state welcome centers throughout PA. There's about 14 different welcome centers, and that's completely free. You just have to ship the brochures to them. If you're doing social media or any sort of digital ads, that's easy to kind of define what towns or areas that you want it to be advertised in. Same thing with print, radio, and TV. Ask about their coverage area. Even some of our local channels do reach out to the Poconos and out to Williamsport, and they can help you with the targeting there. And I will note that the grant can be used to cover your ad in the visitor's guide. So if you are already taking out an ad in the guide, you can write that into your grant because we are distributing the guide over the 50-mile radius. The next category is historic preservation project. So this is to improve, restore, or preserve an existing historic site or building that is either currently a tourism draw or has the potential to become one. It can't be used on a private residence or a business, so only nonprofit or municipal run buildings or sites. It also cannot be used for capital improvements, so things like sidewalks or sewers would not be able to be eligible. This one, since I've been here, I've not seen anyone apply for this category. It is not a super common category, and I think because it is a little more difficult to prove that what we call heads in beds, getting people to come and stay overnight. But if you can show that your site is bringing people to the area, definitely go for it. It's definitely an interesting project. And the last one is wayfinding aids. So this is anything related to maps, signage, informational kiosks, anything that would assist or orient visitors once they're here. So I've seen this as an outdoor group printing trail maps to hand out. People have also used it for what's called TODS signage. So if you drive down the highway and you see those blue or brown signs that point out attractions, that has been a project in the past. Signs or markers pointing out historic sites, anything that's going to help orient people around. So the dates and deadlines, we follow the same dates about every year. So June 1st, the grant applications become available on our website, endlessmountains.org/grants, and I'll show you that in a moment. September 25th, that is always and forever the deadline. So if September 25th were to land on a Sunday, we would allow it to be postmarked by Monday, which would be September 26th. Some people mail it, some people deliver it. So, as long as it's postmarked by the 25th or you are delivering it and it's here by the 25th, that's good. For the people dropping it off, about a week, the week that they're due, I usually put a waterproof box on our front porch. So if you're here after hours, you can just drop it off in that box and it will be safe. January is when the grant recipients are contacted via mail. So you'll receive a letter saying how much you were awarded. And then you'll also receive a contract, which you'll sign and return to get your check. So after that, you have a full calendar year to complete the project. So January 30th of that next year is when you turn in your final report, and I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. So, we're doing applications right now for 2026. We'll announce the winners January 2027. January 30th of 2028 would be when those final reports are due. So what kind of goes on between that September 25th deadline and when the grants are awarded? So first, the EMVB staff and a committee of our board members do a preliminary review of the applications just to make sure it's an eligible project and all the different materials are there. After that, each county has a room tax committee that's appointed by the county commissioners, and they review those applications and vote to make the final awards. After that, the county commissioners sign off on them at a meeting. So important to know, myself and our staff, we don't make the final votes on the awards. Therefore, we can answer any questions and give you some guidance along the way. So where to find the application? Here's the link, endlessmountains.org/grants, or you can find it on any page on our website if you scroll down to the bottom, and there will be a white link in the menu that says room tax grants. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to switch out of here. I'm going to endlessmountains.org/grants. So here it is. You can download it as a PDF or a Word doc. It gives all the different dates. This is just the first page of the grant application. And then once we're done with this video, I will put a link to this video in there too. I'm going to download and show you the grant application. Oops. Okay. Is that showing up? So here is the grant application. And if you're not able to print or something, you can always call us and we can provide that hard copy for you. But I'm going to walk us through this application kind of step by step and what each piece is. So this first page is everything that we just went over in the PowerPoint. The purpose, the categories, the eligibility, and then also the general conditions, like I said, which lay out what you can and can't spend it on. A few things I will point out here in the general conditions, you do have to have a 25% cash or in-kind match. So a lot of people use the in-kind match because volunteer hours do count towards it. So you can just Google national hourly volunteer rate. I just looked it up the other day. It was $36.14. So you can see if you have 10 volunteers at an event working several hours, that can make your match really quickly. Like I said, it lists here the things that cannot be spent for. Down here is, we do ask that anything that you create, printed, radio, TV, does have this verbiage here, funded in part by county name, room tax fund, and Endless Mountains Visitors Bureau. We also ask that if you have a website, that you just provide a link from your site to our site. So this can be small, it can be at the bottom of your site. But yes, in the slides that I'll send you, it'll show you some examples of what this looks like. It doesn't have to be big, it can be something small at the bottom of a page. So the next page, this is just like a cover sheet, the instructions saying, complete all sections, submit all the documents. You do need 5 copies so that everybody on the committee can have and review a copy. And then there's the address if you are mailing it. The form just signing off that it's true and that you will use the grant for what you're saying in the application.
Does anyone else see the application that you're going through? Because I still see the slides.
Oh,
yeah, I do too.
Okay. Let me just switch this for a moment. Is it showing up now?
Yes, now I can see.
Okay. Sorry about that. But this was the first page I was showing everything we reviewed, the general conditions with the match, with the verbiage for the materials, the cover sheet signing off that everything is true. And then we get into kind of the heart of the application. So you'll check off your category at the top, project name. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can just be museum brochures or strawberry festival. It doesn't have to be anything over the top. Project dates, if you're hosting an event, that would be the day of the event. If it's an ongoing campaign, you can give the time range, or you can give a completed end date. Amount requested, so putting in the amount that you want. So it does have to be a solid number, not a range, so whatever you're estimating that you will need. So people often ask, how much should I request? And I say, usually the pot of money between the 2 counties is about $125,000, give or take, either way. And we get requests everything from a few $100s to do a small run print of a brochure, all the way up to 5 figures for organizations that run multi-day events or several events throughout the year. So it really is a big range. My tip is to aim high, put in everything that you know you're going to need, and then add some nice to have items so that if you don't get everything that you ask for, you can kind of cut out the extras and you'll still have everything that you needed. Organization name, tax ID number, the name of the contact person, that will be the person that we're reaching out to give the check to and to get the final report from. So just to make sure, that person and their contact information is all up to date. So you'll give their title, the address that you want all the correspondence sent to, county that the event or project will take place in, so we know whether to send it over to Sullivan or Wyoming County. It's also so that an organization in Wyoming County couldn't apply and then hold the event in Scranton, say, or that the event or the project is going to still benefit the county that it was collected in. Phone, fax, email, and website. So one tip I will say is once you finish your grant application, if you make a copy for yourself, that way you'll remember everything you wrote in it. And also if there's any sort of change in employment, volunteers come and go, that the person after you will have a copy and they'll know what was in that grant and what needs to be done. I know that happens a lot with nonprofits, that people come and go or they're off the board or things like that. So it just makes it easier for the organization. After that, we have all the questions. So this is really the heart of the application. At the top here, it says to keep it no more than 3 pages. That's just so people know it doesn't have to be a 10-page report. It can be just short, clear answers are totally fine. So the first question, what is the mission or purpose of your organization? You'll just want to copy and paste your mission statement. Next, we have provide a brief summary of the proposed project, which includes a projected timeline for the distribution of your promotional items and/or completion of your project/event. So what they're looking for here, a short paragraph about what you're doing and when. So for example, we're making a brochure to promote our museum, park, trail, whatever. It's going to be a trifold brochure with this sort of information in it. We're printing 2,000 copies to have by March 1st, and we're going to distribute them all summer long. Or if you're doing an event, saying something like, hey, we're hosting this festival at the fairgrounds on May 30th. We're going to use the grant money for TV and radio ads, billboards, social media, running from February to May. Just giving that brief overview. Question 3, what are the goals and objectives for your proposed project or event? So this can be things like attendance, ticket sales, raising money for a cause, raising awareness about a cause. And this is also a really great opportunity to tie it back into tourism. So mentioning something about reaching new markets or new audiences, this would be a great time to show how it relates back to that room tax. Next question, how will your proposed project or event attract tourists and visitors to our area and generate overnight stays? So very important question. What is the connection to tourism? So this is really your time to shine. What makes your event or attraction special that someone's going to come from out of the area and stay overnight? So you can give a quick preview to your marketing plan, which we'll discuss later, such as where you're going to advertise or how you're going to target visitors. But I've seen, if it's a multi-day event or an evening event, that encourages people to stay overnight. If there's a certain topic or theme that complements other trip ideas, like this is an outdoor rec project and people are coming here to hike and kayak anyway and make a trip out of it, that's another way you can kind of tie it back. Next question, identify and list qualifications and experiences of key management staff, volunteers, board members, etc., responsible for making sure the project is completed. List any similar past projects the organization has completed. List any supporting or sponsoring organizations for this project and any in-kind support. So this question is really just asking about your credibility and your track record for success. So who is going to make this project a reality? It's an opportunity to boast a little bit about your past successes and mention any other stakeholders that are helping out. Next, we have how will you specifically evaluate or quantify your efforts to generate more visitors to our area and overnight stays? If this is a recurring event, please include a history of attendance for the past 3 years. So how are you going to measure and track success that's actually drawing the people from the 50+ mile radius? So I've seen people get creative with how they do this. So if you're using online registrations or online ticketing, that can give you town names and zip codes. That can be really helpful. If you partner with a hotel for room deals, I've seen events say, call this hotel for a special rate, and then they're able to track how many rooms were booked through that rate. I know sometimes we're not able to have that high-tech sort of online registration thing, so I've seen people also do it with just a good old-fashioned guest book. Where are you coming from? How did you hear about us? That sort of thing, and then they tally it up at the end of the year, and it gives them a rough idea of how many people came from maybe out of state or out of area. One interesting way I saw an event track this is they had like a registration or sign-in table. It was a free event that people could come and go to, but there was wine tastings, so they had to check IDs, and as they were checking IDs, they said, hey, where are you from? And they just kept a tally of local versus out of town, which was, a simple but effective way to measure it. You could do this if you're giving away like a swag item at an event. You can tell how many people came if you gave them away. And also, just that sort of polling people as you go to give a rough idea. And then if you're using, Facebook or your website, you can usually get data about who is looking at your social media and your website. So you can search by top cities and often by state using your Meta Business Suite for socials or your website analytics for the web. And the last one is identify your cash or in-kind 25% match and the source of that match. So the cash match, if you're going to contribute yourself towards the project, so if you're asking $1,000 for ads, the organization would be contributing $250 of their own money towards the project. For in-kind, again, the volunteers estimating how many people you'll have and the hours worked to meet that match. So that's that top section. This middle section is really just saying that you can answer these in a numbered list form. So sometimes people try to make it into an essay or a letter, but the reviewers are reviewing dozens of these, so it is easier for them to just flip through and be like, oh, what was the answer to question 4 again, or comparing between applications. And it also makes it easier for you as the grant writer. This bottom list is the supporting materials. So it's just reminding us to send in 5 copies, and it asks for the organization's annual budget. It does say indicate any plans for large reserves. And what this means is if you have an account that you cannot touch that has a large sum in it, or if you are saving up for a major project such as a renovation or a building project, it is wise just to put a little note in there for the committee. Hey, this is for, we can't use this, we can't touch this fund, or this is for our big project, just so they don't look at it and say, oh, why are they asking for money if they have $100,000 put away? Next is the audited financial statement or copy of your IRS 990. Sometimes these financial statements are very lengthy, so if you just provide the first page, that's perfectly fine, just to make sure that you are in decent financial standing. Next is the project's itemized budget. This is an important piece that gets a lot of attention in the review process. So what is the breakdown of the cost? And it helps to be as specific as possible here. Just showing that you did the research, you have your plan. So for example, instead of saying, we're going to buy newspaper ads for $1,000, saying, we're going to do the Williamsport paper for X amount and the Binghamton paper for X amount. Again, it just shows that you did your research and that you do have a plan going forward. So you'll list out all your estimated costs, and if it is an annual event, to give the financial report for the previous year, just to ensure that that is a profitable event. Then you'll provide, if you're a nonprofit, a copy of your 501c3 or C6 certification, a list of your board of directors, and then the marketing plan. This, I think, gets reviewed the most of any of the pieces. So being very specific about what areas you're targeting, whether that's the towns or the zip codes. So for example, it's stronger to say, I'm going to target Lancaster, Hershey, and Harrisburg than just saying, I'm going to target Southern Pennsylvania. So being as specific as possible with the areas and also with the publications that you're using and what is their coverage area. So we're going to use this magazine and they distribute to this area. Usually if you're advertising with print, radio, TV, they'll be able to provide those stats to you. And then if you're using web ads, website, social media, how you're going to push it beyond this area, if you're going to do social media ads, if you're going to do Google ads. And then from there, you can usually define what geographic area you want that ad to go to. And then finally, if you are applying for wayfinding, we just ask for the specs of what that's going to look like. So what kind of sign is it? What's the design? If you have a preliminary design, where is it going to be located? And that sort of thing. So on the bottom, there is a little note. We do get a lot of repeat applicants year after year, especially for things like the annual events. But there is no guarantee that you will get the same amount each year or that you will get 100% of what you asked for. So the amount of money varies from year to year, and so does the amount of applicants. So if there are a lot of applicants and it's a competitive year, sometimes you don't always get the full amount that you requested. And again, that's why I kind of tell people, add in some extras when in your marketing plan, and so that way you can cut some things if you don't get your full amount. Again, it doesn't mean that your grant was bad in any way. It just means there were a lot of applicants or a smaller pot that year. So after you do your application, grant awardees are contacted in January, like I mentioned. You sign your contract, and then we will send back the check with the final report. If you lose your final report, that's okay. We can send you a new copy. But then you have until January 30th of that next year to complete the project and turn in the final report. You can, of course, turn it in early if it's done and you just want to get it done. So I will show you the final report just to give you an idea of what that looks like. So this is an example of the final report. So you'll see there's a table to list all of the checks and invoices, just showing that the money was spent on what you said in the application. You'd include copies of the different invoices, and then copies of any sorts of ads that you placed, printed materials that you made, just so we can see what it looks like, and we'll check that that verbiage is there for funded in part by. It does ask you also to document your in-kind match, so showing where you contributed that cash match or listing out how many volunteers you had and how many hours. I do find it's easier to keep a file, whether that's a physical folder or an electronic folder, and as the invoices come in, just put them in that file, and then it's a lot easier to gather them all up at the end. And if you're hosting an event, do make sure you get us the information early as possible. Then we'll put it on our online calendar, we'll promote it on social media, and we want to give a lot of time to make sure we give you the most promotion for that. So I would say of the whole grant application, kind of what I would consider the three most important parts are proving the overnight stays, the project budget, and the marketing plan. I would say those are the three pieces that I know I personally really look at when we're going through them for the eligibility and just making sure everything is lining up. We see so many amazing projects each year, and I'm happy to talk about project ideas with you. And I'm also happy to discuss, if you're listening and you're thinking, maybe this grant isn't quite a right fit for me. We have a lot of connections with the other local and state agencies. We might be able to point you towards a grant that does fit your project. So you can always give me a call at the office. I have a slide with my contact info. Yep, but you can give us a call, 570-836-5431, or you can email me here, jill@endlessmountains.org. And, you know, it's June, we have until September, so we have a lot of time. So I'd say, you know, start now, and if you have questions, it is better to ask early. I know when it gets down to the wire sometimes, and you have changes that need to be made, it can get stressful. So just, you know, come to us early, and we're glad to answer any questions. But did anyone have any questions specifically? I can turn off the recording if anyone wanted to ask a question that wasn't recorded. Let me do that right now.